When I was a kid, my dad kept a second family in our basement. Growing up, I thought everyone had a second family in their basement. In retrospect, I understand how ridiculous that sounds, but it was all I'd ever known. I knew that my dad tended the leftovers from dinner with foil every night, got up without a word, and carried the plate to the basement. I'd listen from my room as he lumbered down the creaking steps and held my breath to hear the muffled mumblings of his greeting. I knew he'd go downstairs to see his second family off before work every morning, then kiss me on the top of my head and ruffle my hair as he walked out. I knew that each Christmas, he'd bring a sack of brightly wrapped packages downstairs in a Santa suit. I knew that my dad had a second family in the basement, and it seemed so normal that I thought everyone else did, too. I'll never forget the first time I asked my mom about them. I was young, maybe 5, when I finally found the words to ask, "Mommy, why can't I play with the people in the basement?" My mom was the human embodiment of frenetic energy, an organic perpetual motion machine. She was always pacing, cleaning, or stirring a pot with a lit cigarette tucked between her yellowing fingers. As that question hung in the air, I'll never forget that she finally stopped for the first time. Her stillness was unsettling in a way I can't quite explain. "We don't talk about them," she rushed, chasing the hurried statement with a lengthy drag off her cigarette. She blew a plume of smoke out the open window before leaning down to meet me at face level, her bloodshot eyes mere inches from my own. "You don't need to play with the kids, but the kids need daddy." She paused again, the haunting image of her at a standstill permanently etched into my mind. Finally, she muttered, "Daddy needs them, too." That night, I heard my mom shrieking at my dad in their bedroom. I was surprised that they didn't know that I knew, more shocked, frightened, even, to find that they didn't want me to know. Most of all, they didn't want me to tell anyone at school, anyone at all, really. After that night, everything was different. My dad only tended the leftovers after dinner and brought the food downstairs after I went to bed. He stopped visiting them in the mornings altogether. My mom started acting differently, too. I'd always noticed that she was distant from my dad. I had always noticed how she bristled under his touch and stole away to the other side of the room whenever he entered. But it got worse after that. As a kid, I felt deeply guilty. I felt like I'd ruined my parents' marriage. But I was just a kid, and I was curious. My mom meant to dissuade me from asking more questions, but she accidentally gave away something that made me even more curious. The downstairs family had kids, maybe kids my age, to play with. I wanted to know about them in the way that little kids need to understand the strangeness of this chaotic world and make sense of the nonsense surrounding us daily. The nonsense that we become acclimated to as adults but struggle with endlessly as children, like a puzzle, riddle, or word problem on a math test about buying 80 watermelons. Another change following that critical night, the basement door was fitted with a sturdy lock. Even still, I needed to know. There's something horribly dreadful about finding out that a second basement family is abnormal, something more horrible still about not knowing who or why. I decided to get to the bottom by the time I was 7. To avoid getting in trouble, I could only investigate when 3 conditions were met. I was home from school, my dad was still at work, and my mom wasn't around to catch me. These circumstances rarely overlapped, but the first time I came home from school to find that my dad's car wasn't in the garage and my mom's endless movement had driven her to the point of exhaustion, I threw off my shoes and crept to the basement door, quiet in my sock feet. And then, I knocked. It was a quiet knock for fear of waking my mom from her nap, but it was a knock, nonetheless. It was more than just a knock, too. It was an initiation, an invitation, a confrontation of my life's greatest and most terrifying mystery. I jumped when a gentle knock returned from the other side. It was almost immediate. Like the person on the other side had been waiting for me. The thought froze me in place momentarily, but I knew I had no time to waste. My mouth felt suddenly of sandpaper and chalk, but I leaned into the door to whisper, "Hi. Hi." It was a little girl, her voice sweet yet timid. Like testing the keys on a piano for the first time. "I'm Ricky. What's your name?" A long pause. "Lila. My brother's is Isaac, but he doesn't talk so well. But he's still little. Mommy says he'll start talking when he's ready. There's 3 of you down there?" She replied simply as if the entire situation felt as normal for her as it had for me on the opposite side of the basement door. "Daddy comes to visit sometimes, though, so I guess there's 4. My eyes widened as a flurry of questions began to sprout in my mind, but I heard my mom stir in her room. I sped down the hallway and into the playroom. I busied my hands with my toys, but my mind was somewhere else. The sprouts of questions grew rapidly, soon overtaking my thoughts like an unruly patch of weeds. Like weeds, the questions were stubborn and hard to get rid of. The roots of the situation and its implications unraveled, stretching through my whole body. Fear planted itself firmly in my belly as I was forced to confront the possibility that I didn't really know my dad, and didn't know my own family at all. What did that mean for me if my dad was Lila's dad, too? For my family? And why wasn't she allowed to come out of the basement? Over the next few years, I stole away to the basement door in those rare moments of freedom. I got to know Lila, got to like her and eventually even to love her. She was my best friend. As a kid, I was pretty lonely. My classmates shied away from me for reasons I couldn't quite understand, like something about me was inherently repellent to my peers. I only had one friend at school. And at home, I had Lila. As we spoke more, a never-ending stream of back and forth questioning crammed into the briefest moments, we both came to understand the differences between us, our lives, and our circumstances. The differences that at first felt normal grew bigger, sharper, and scarier than we could comprehend. The unfairness of it all became impossible to ignore. Lila lamented that she wasn't allowed to go to school, that she couldn't go outside to play or make friends or ride bikes around the sack in the summer until the street lamps flickered on and the cicadas started to scream.